As we saw on Tuesday, Revit has 4 main types of light sources, depending upon their shape: point, line, rectangle, or circle, each of which can radiate light either in all directions as a sphere, as a hemisphere, as a spotlight, or as an IES web. Those are what I'm referring to as the real light sources that in a Revit model actually create light in the model. And then there are also, I'm calling them fake light sources. I don't know what the official terminology is, but the real ones are invisible. We don't see the actual bulbs or tubes or candle flames or whatever. They're just like a glowing, invisible thing. But if we want to give the impression that there actually is a flame on the candle or a bulb in a lamp, then we need to create that shape, the candle flame or the bulb, and make it glow on its own, but it doesn't actually cast any light on anything. So real light sources, fake light sources, shades. Many light fixtures have those of varying degrees of transparency. And then the support, which is everything else. That's the jug that it's put in, or in LL25, the housing and baffles, anything that isn't a shade or a light source. And I guess another point is, when we're thinking about this, is we don't have to physically, completely, accurately build a lamp to have it be convincing. For instance, in a real a lamp with a shade, you'll have the shade like this, and the wires up here, and then this will connect down to something that goes around the bulb, and here's the bulb and all that, and then the bottom thing. And really all we need for us to do that is to have the shade and the invisible light source, and then whatever our stand is. I mean, there's no gravity involved. It's not going to collapse if we don't have the metal in there. It would depend on how accurately you want this to represent reality, especially when it's seen, like these guys up at the top. Maybe that's important to how it looks to you. In that case, you would model those little wires to fit in there. But so this is sort of the bare minimum, and I think we'll start here and then find our way towards somewhat more realistic looking ones. Fast forward to a 1-room house with walls, wood floor, and an ACT ceiling. And I'm going to set a camera up here aiming over in this direction so we can see the effect of things and know what we're doing with. Camera just over here looking that way. The first light fixture I'd like to introduce you to is one called a studio light. It's just an invisible light source. No shade, no stand, no hardware. I've used these to convey a sense of what a room will look like with artificial lighting, but have no idea of which actual fixtures will be used. So we'll put 1 or 2 of those in here, and they'll just hover in space invisibly and provide a general sense of illumination. Each one it's got a location, and light falls off inversely from there. So if it's here, I will get a slightly brighter spot on the ceiling and the floor. It's not just like completely general illumination. All light in Revit has a source, as indeed it does in the real world. But let's look at how that works first of all by itself. If I render this view, and we're interior artificial only, and render it, what do you think I'll get before it shows up? There's no lights. That's it. It's like, okay, we don't need the red spotlights this time through, so we'll cancel that. Let's turn on the ceiling plan view. But if I go place a studio light here, and it's just a component like any other component, load family, lighting, architectural, interior, studio light. You can see that with all these, we see some sort of preview of what that looks like. These are a little hard to see. The studio light is just a sphere representing the origin of a light source. Okay. And I'm going to put it, my camera's over here, my door's over here. I'll just put it right in the middle of the room. And then we'll go back to the camera view and see what we see. Camera view. So Revit gives us enough lines to it that we can tell where it is and how. Let's just try the rendering now. Rendering, kick it up to medium. Artificial only interior. So it gives us just the beginnings of a glow. And part of the problem with this one right now is it was placed at 8 feet, and it's the ceiling's right at 8 feet. So there's a confusion that we'll run into with other things of when the light source is actually like embedded in a material. This is not what we really should be getting here for a second. So I'm going to go into if I pick this guy, and by default, I don't know why they do it like this. It comes in when you say place it, it places itself at 8 with the light source itself right at 8 feet off the ground. Just so you know, that's how that comes. I'm going to move it down from there to somewhere near eye height. Maybe let's say at 5 feet. So it'd be minus 3 feet coming down from 8. So we'll just let it sit there in the middle of the room and try it again. So it starts to gently light the walls, but because it's here and close to the ceiling, we are still getting the hot spot on the ceiling. Just so you know, it's not like totally uniform light that comes from the walls themselves. So when is this actually handy? Let me put a window in. And see what this room looks like just lit with just the sunlight. Render interior sun only. So just light coming in through the window. And just the contrast between in and out is so high. But if we crank that around to be sun and artificial, which will bring this guy back into play, we can start to flesh out the room. And here's a trick I discovered. If I put those light sources behind the camera, then I never end up seeing the hot spot. So let me just quickly do that. Ceiling plan. Oh, the reason we don't see that anymore is interesting, is that if you remember by default, a ceiling plan sort of looks up from 7'6", and our light fixture is down at 5 feet. So really what I want to do here with this view, this ceiling plan view, I want to change my view range. There we go, view range. Instead of looking up from 7'6", I want to say look up from 4 feet to be able to see the light fixture in the ceiling plan. Okay, so there's that. So I'm going to move this back to here, let's say, center of the room. And now I want to make sure that my view is not going to include that. So with this view being active, I want to see where that camera is. It's over here somewhere, but I forget exactly where. With this view being active, I can go over to the 3D view that I created with the camera, right click and say show camera. And then I see where that is, and I can re-aim it if I need to. I can move it. I'll move it up a little bit so that this light fixture is clearly behind me. Re-aim. Okay, and then we can go back to that. And now if I render again, sun and artificial, render. Let me change it to just a sun all by itself to see the difference. So we can see all that. Render that. Okay, so it did make a difference. And if I decide that I want it to be brighter, more interior light, oops. I'll go back to my ceiling plan, pick it, and just brighten that fixture. Just make it have more output. And with all the light fixtures, the way you change their intensity is in properties, edit type, all the way down to the bottom. And it's saying we're at 100 watts. I'm just going to make this brighter. I'm just going to make this 400 watts. I forget all those lumen per watts efficacies. Let's say 400 watts instead of 100. Apply. Okay. Go back. Render. Render. Okay. So what you can see over here is the light is near the wall behind me. It's casting bright light up on the ceiling, and I'm seeing that reflected in the window. If we do sun and artificial, that should probably go away. Yeah, so you start to fill in that scene. And if we want to look like that still is light coming from the north sky instead of the warmish glow that we're picking up from that fixture, we can go back here, pick it, edit type, come down, and change its color temperature up to north sky daylight, which is this 6,500 degrees Kelvin, which is that sort of cooler white. Say apply, okay, render. That changed some, right? I think so. Yeah, it's not as sort of brownish yellow as it was before. So that's the very simplest sort of light fixture we've got. It's not even a fixture. It's just a light source hanging in the air somewhere glowing. Now we'll take a look at a couple of Revit fixtures that are built differently, and then we'll build our own. Let's look at a Revit table lamp. CM, load family, table lamp. Looks good to me. Put it there, and I'm going to put it on a desk. One of those that comes in the architectural template. And I forget how high these things are, so I'll do an elevation view. So there's that. Well, it's faster this way, isn't it? So I'm interested in a couple of things: how it's going to cast light onto the desk, how it's going to cast light onto the wall, and how it's going to cast light onto the ceiling, to see if it's sort of reasonably realistic. Let's just render this and see what happens. Well, it looks pretty good to me, except that, you know, a real lamp here with a regular light bulb would have light coming out the top up onto the ceiling and sort of scooping up onto the walls the same way that it's scooping down. So my guess is, looking at this fixture, it's got one of the light fixture types that only aims down, only aims in one direction, not in all directions. So let's just take a look at that fixture and see if we can tweak that to make it look like what we want. Frankly, most of the time when I'm dealing with a custom light fixture, I like to start with something that's there that more or less works instead of doing it entirely from scratch. But let's edit the family. Oh, okay. This light fixture is one of these IES profiles, and it's, as you can see, it's only aiming down. I would like to just change this to a different type. I'm going to just change it to the point light source and just go in all directions. So instead of whatever the IES people say a bulb does, I'm going to do what I know that it does, which is it shines light in all directions. So instead of using this web, we're just going to use this light in all directions. Won't change a thing otherwise. Apply. Okay. Load into project and close. I'm not going to change it on disk. I don't know there are any parameters values assigned to it, but let's just do anyhow. So you notice there isn't really a bulb here yet, a visible bulb. There's just floating in space a light source, just like our studio light was invisible. So we're getting a little bit up here, a little glow, and right up here, we're seeing the scoop where this light source is shining up through there and hitting the wall there. I'm not sure why that little dot is showing there. Just to let you know. Let's pick this fixture and give it a brighter bulb. That would be 60 watts. Let's make that 200 and see what starts to happen. Oh, it's worth mentioning right now is that I'm rendering, 2 times a minute or something or other. And the more pixels you have to render, the longer it takes. Just a linear thing. So I think what I'll do here actually is, just to make this all go as fast as possible, crop this down to only the part that I'm interested in, which is desk, wall, ceiling, and lamp. And also the size of that matters. This will take a lot less time to render than this will. But we need to be able to see it. So that's starting to look more like what I expect the lamp to be looking like. Again, this little dot, we'll have to track that down. The dots don't show up in the higher quality desktop rendering settings, in the cloud rendering settings, or in Inkscape. So here's a typical light fixture with a single light source, a shade, and a support. If I do want to have a sense of that bulb in there, I'm going to go into Edit Family and get into a front elevation view. So there's our actual light source. I'm gonna create a bulb here. Well, first of all, I'm going to sort of drag this up to where it might legitimately catch to the bottom of a bulb. And then here, I'm going to create a revolve that's just sort of bulb shaped. Create revolve. Okay, very strangely shaped light bulb. That's the boundary. We'll create the axis line from here to here. So there's that. And it's okay that the light source is inside that bulb, because we're gonna assign a glass material to that bulb that it will just shine out through. I'm going to assign a material parameter to this. Create bulb material. Material and finishes, and this will be the type okay. And that way we can assign that out in the project. I'm going to save this with a new name. File, save as family table lamp class. We'll put it over here. Oh, it's on the floor. But we can see those two next to each other. And now that we can see that bulb, I'm going to give that a glowing material so that it will glow of itself. And that will be for this light fixture. We've got some materials to edit. And the bulb material typically is going to be this one called high luminance glass, which is white glowing glass. Not here. There we go, glass high white luminance. And what we can see for that material is it's translucent white, it's reflective, it itself is transparent, so the light from the light source inside the bulb will shine out. And it's self-illuminating. It just glows all by itself. We got a couple of options here. I'm just gonna say frosted bulb because that sounds good to me. Ooh, that's a lot of lumens. Let's go back to this one. Apply, okay. Apply, okay. And then render again. Render again. Let's see how bright we made that bulb first of all. The actual light fixture. Okay, the 200, the same 200 as the other one. So what you can see here is the shade itself is partly transparent, so we can see through it over here, as we can see through it over there. So something along those lines. I would really like to make that brighter, but I think in a real lampshade is the point of it is to shade our eyes from the intensity of the bulb. So that's there. If we want to make the lampshade itself, let's go investigate that material. We can see that that is a material that just comes with Revit called cloth lampshade. Let's go look at that under Manage Materials. Cloth lampshade. So it's a fabric. The only other thing special about it's just an image with some transparency. Okay, well let's change it. Let's change the transparency to which we can see through it down to 0. Apply. Okay. So those are pretty reasonable looking lamps, I think. They behave the way that I know they do. They're brighter when things are near and dimmer when things are away, and they make that scoop and they make that circle on the ceiling. So I feel like that's pretty close. So that's the one with one real light source, a shade, and a support. I'm on the bottom of page 1 here. As you're looking for the fixture that you're going to make, and you've just decided whatever it has to be, a couple of decisions to make. Will this fixture have one light source or more than that? If it's just one light source, like this one, I would imagine, the procedure for that's on page 3. If it's got multiple light sources, all that's on page 4. The very first thing to decide when creating a new light fixture family is how is this going to be mounted? Is it always going to be a ceiling fixture? Is it a pendant fixture that by definition hangs from a ceiling? Is it going to be something that you could stick on any surface? Is it going to be floor standing? Is it something like that table lamp that you would like just to be able to move up and down to place on whatever piece of furniture it's on? So the very first decision when creating a light fixture family is to choose the appropriate family template, depending on how the fixture will be attached to the building. So number of light sources, how will it be mounted? What will be its shape and distribution? What's going to work the best? And this might take some experimentation, but when we go into File, New, Family. So by illustration of that first one, we have a light fixture ceiling-based, light fixture wall-based, just light fixture, just do anything you want with it. And then these linear ones, which can be used for cove lighting and similar applications. If we say lighting fixture wall-based, and just get into that family, we see it here. Let's look at it in an elevation view. We already are. Left elevation. There that is, and we have to decide which of these will it be. The shape of the source will be either a point light source, which will cast hard-edged shadows because the light's just coming from one point, a linear light source, or a rectangle, which is like what these are, which give a much more diffuse light and much softer shadows. Generally, the larger the light source, the softer the edge. And then we have to decide, will it be spherical in all directions, hemispherical, a spot, or one of these IES profiles? So those decisions need to be made. Will you have a shade or not? Are we going to see the bare bulb? If so, what shape and what material? And if it's going to be attached to a wall or a ceiling or the floor, what physically supports in the real world, what physically supports it? I'll close. Let's look at one of the floor lamps for what that support structure might look like. Floor lamp arm extension. And a lot of times, even in really great renderings, they conveniently forget to have a cord. They're a paint to model and never look good, or else the lamp will be behind a sofa or something. So you can ignore the fact that there's no cord there. It's not really hard to have a cord along the floor. That would just be a little extrusion looking like a snake and 1/4 of an inch high. But when that has to like come up to the wall and plug in and stuff, you know, a lot of times, you know, when you're seeing computers and mice and stuff on desk and renderings, they're magically not powered by anything. Have I ever modeled cord? Only one close-up of an electronic device that had to show it plugged in. I had the thing itself and a little piece of cord, and then sort of a little gap, and then just the tail end of the plug, implying that there's longer stuff in there. But I've never done it for a rendering. Does it need to show, is the switch an important part of this, or power or USB charging ports? That would be good to know, as opposed to reaching up inside and doing it. So my thought was maybe take a break and come up here and sketch a fixture with a single light source, our own unique design, and then try to put that together over the course of the rest of the class. So let's take 5, and I need some light fixture designers to come volunteer their services. One of our graduates, Michael McCluggage, I say our graduates, I didn't know him until afterwards, but his whole life, he's a lighting fixture designer. That's what he does for a living. You want to meet him? Okay, he's in Florida, but his family's here, and he said if I come talk to people anytime, he'd love to do it. So do I have to appoint a lighting designer? Oh, well, good. Katie, she's just a wealth of ideas. So really, this is like a shell, and it's hollow inside with a bulb inside? Yeah. Okay, at least somebody came forward with something. Is the bottom solid? So here's a solid bottom. Is this hanging from the ceiling? Is this sitting on a desk? How big is this? Like a foot? A foot by 6 inches? 6 inches. 30 degrees. Let's make this look like science. Now, the interesting part will be, how do we make it hollow? I think what we could do is, if we make the bottom like that, and then make walls that are like that, and hollow inside, and then, well, actually, you know, the top and the bottom could be the same, so that there'll be top and bottom, and then inside we have a big glowing omnidirectional orb thing, and the color is yellow, I think. And you know, if we just decided that this thing is battery powered instead of cord powered, it could sit like this and rock gently back and forth. I like the way you think. Okay, let's get the show on the road. We have, courtesy of our resident lighting designer, a lighting fixture that will be called the Big Cheese. I mean, it really could not be anything else. And Katie's decided that it is a desktop fixture about 1 foot long and 6 inches high with a 30-ish degree angle there. It will be hollow with holes on all sides for the light to shine through. It's more, I would say, of a novelty fixture than a study fixture. We decided it should be battery powered inside. That's magic. We don't have to deal with that. But that way it could stand on its curved side and go back and forth. Actually, that means the battery should like be down here, so it would keep writing itself. So I think the way we should proceed here, then I think the best way is to make the bottom like this, and then trace that in plan and make walls that are like 1/8 of an inch thick, and then sit them right on top of that. And then we can have a top the same as the bottom that could go inside. And then you can use the join command to make them all look like a seamless thing with no joints. And then we can create voids as needed to create the holes through that. See where it goes. Let's look through our checklist here. So if we go into File, New, Family, light, just plain lighting fixture. It's not ceiling base, it's not wall base, it's none of these. It's just plain lighting fixture. We can put wherever we want. And here we are in plan view with our light source, which right now we might as well just edit that to make sure it's the right kind. Good. So it's a point shape, a point light source going in all directions. So that's good to start with. Okay, so let's make our piece of cheese. So I think what I'd do is create an extrusion for the floor just to start with. Oh, that's awfully big. Let's make it 14 inches. I don't know, just. And I'm going to rotate that down. Oh, somewhere in that range. So we have these, well, obviously the dimensions are not super critical. But I think the approximate size is important. So does that look acceptable? Okay. And I'll say, okay, and then make this just like 1/8 of an inch high. We'll use that everywhere for our holes. Or should they be, you know, we might really want to have those, it be thicker to give some sense of like the solidity of cheese compared to just the, okay. So the bottom can stay where it is. I'm thinking that the walls might well want to be like 1 inch thick though, instead of just 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so there's the bottom. 3D view. There's that. And we'll move the light fixture down when we get there. Let's make this for now. Plan view. Oh, should these be straight lines, do you think? For the cheese? Shouldn't they be a little wavy? I think so. Let's go back and edit the extrusion and get rid of that, and maybe do something like this. I mean, just for maybe one's straight and one's curved, you know. One could be jagged. We're going all out here. Oops. Okay, so there's my piece of cheese. Now, when we're making the walls, so this will be an extrusion, but it'll be like 1 inch thick extrusion. Instead of trying to trace those, we can use this great tool, which just copies lines. So this green line and the pointer means as I'm creating my new geometry, I can just pick geometry that's there already, which is super. And then to make these 1 inch thick, I'll offset all these 1 inch to the inside. Offset 1 inch. Oh, I'm feeling it already. That's a little thicker there. So from the outside in, this will be solid, and then we get to here, then this will be void inside. That's where we'll put the light source. Okay, we've finished with the boundary, and we'll make that 6 inches high. And you know the bottom, Katie, since that will sometimes be on the, sometimes that'll be a side when it's rocking, we should make that an inch thick too, instead of an eighth. Just saying, get into a front view, see what we've created here. And I think with all of these, I'm going to dissociate them from their plane so we can move them around as we want to do. Select the object and click on that little guy. Make it thicker. Move these up to there. Oops. And then copy this one from here up to the top, because this is going to be the top. Copy CO, CO, from there to there. Yeah. And then to smooth these all out, we can use modified join. We can then pick these like that and join them together so we have a seamless piece of cheese. Some of these holes will go just through one side. Let's turn, a good way to visualize this, I think, will be in hidden line, but with some transparency added so we can see what's happening through the whole thing. So how am I going to drill holes in this, in the top of this? A couple of ways. For me, the easiest to say is make the top of this my working plane, and then just draw it right there on that. So deal with this all in 3D since it's such a sculpturally elegant product. So let's say create and then set our work plane to here. Then now that we've set the work plane, we'll create a void extrusion. And I'm just going to pick a random circle, but now as I draw, I'll be drawing on that plane. And we can choose whether that will go through the whole thing or just through part of it. I'll say just through the top. And you don't, back in when you're doing model in place in the project, you have to say, subtract this from this, but in a family, it understands any void you made is just getting subtracted from the object that's already there. So there's a hole. Let's draw some more. Create void form, void extrusion, another circle. Maybe just a little guy. Too small on screen. I've never understood this limitation. Okay. You can see by default, it's making them a foot deep, which is sort of silly. Let's just make them 2 inches deep. Create void extrusion. I'll do a couple more up on the top there. If you need to come back and move one, you can sort of come in and hover until you pick it, and then it can be moved around on the surface. To drill some in through the sides, I'm going to set the work plane to the side of it. Set, pick a plane there. Extrusion, create. Need to get back on the highlighted tab. I created that as a solid. If you created something as a solid by mistake, you can just pick it and then change it to a void. And then maybe I have to cut. Cut geometry. Cut this from that. There we go. It didn't work the first couple of times because I was picking the top instead of the sides, and the hole doesn't penetrate the top. Now, I'm not sure I can set a plane up here on this face. Let's just see what I can do. Create, set, pick a plane. Yeah, you see, none of these curve guys aren't flat. So I think I'll do is go into my plan view, and I'm going to create a reference plane. Create reference plane here. And give it a name called angled plane. And when I go back into this view, I can say, and in 3D views, the angled planes don't show up, but it is running across here. So when I go to create void extrusion, pick a plane, set work plane, I'll pick it from this list, angled 3D plane, okay. And then I'll draw my extrusion, which will be sort of out here in space, but it will extrude, perpendicular to that new reference plane and drill a hole right on through. All right. Same with the back here. RP for reference plane. So I'm just going to put a couple more in here and then move the light fixture in just to see how it works. I have a reference plane across the back here since I can't just draw directly on a curved surface. So then I'll use create, set work plane, and I called it back plane, which is across here. Create void extrusion. I think I've set that already. Yeah. Okay. And sometimes they go the wrong direction or not far enough. And it looks like when it's initially created and it doesn't overlap the solid, then you need to say pick cut, and then the two objects that need to be cut from each other. What am I doing? Anyway, a little weird. Now I'll go into a front view. I'm just going to bring the light fixture down. It looks like I can just do that. And then move all this. Go back to plan view. I wasn't expecting anything quite so exotic. So I located that vertically in the elevation view and then horizontally in this view. So there that is in there. With something like this, I'm going to go Control S, stick it on my desktop. The big cheese. load it into my project. Okay, so it's on there vertically. I'm going to put it over near the wall just to see how that does. Render. Woohoo! Okay, and it's great. It's going up onto the. This is great. It's onto the wall too. Yeah, this will be a hit. You know, maybe part of the battery, there's a little mechanism inside that moves a little weight back and forth, so it would keep it rocking. Yeah, there's a lot here. Okay, so there's that. Pretty bright inside, which it would be. I mean, stuff is only 2 inches away from the bulb. Let me get in a little closer to this and model it, render it again. Well, I think the thickness of the cheese is important. I think that seeing that. Oh, we need to color. We need to color it, of course, too. Yeah, this is a work of genius. I'm going to stop that. And I'd like to be able to control that color from out here. If I got a really good cheese texture, I don't have to take it back into the family. So I go back into the family, create a material parameter for the cheese so we can set it out here in this one. Edit family. We got these. Oh, create the parameter first. That's right. Create this. We create a new parameter called cheese material. Okay. And then since this still really is, it is 3 pieces. It is 3 things whose joints have been erased, but we still need to do that for each individual thing. So we'll say that this one has the cheese material. Okay. This one has the cheese material. And this one has the cheese material. Okay. I'm going to save this to disk. Control S. I'm going to load it into my project and close. And we have added parameters to this, so we will certainly want to say overwrite what we had before and its parameter values since we've added them. Okay. Then let's get into a shaded mode. And now we edit type and pick our cheese material. Let's say what we have that's yellow. Parking stripe, that might be a little much. How about yellow masonry? No, wood, fabric, glass. We might have to make our new one, but let's use parking stripe now because it's a particularly virulent yellow. Okay. Render this guy. Yeah, I mean. Now, one thing that's a little tricky sometimes about families that you make is, can you rotate them around freely in space? If we want to set this up on the edge, can we do that? I'm not sure we can. So for now, I'm going to make a horizontal family and a vertical family. Elevation, rotate these guys. Select them, rotate. This is my curve slide over there. Make that go down. So that'll be, I'll just save this as cheese vertical. That's all I know how to do at this point. I'll investigate that, but I'm not sure. File, save as, family, big cheese vertical, and load it into the project. Okay, so there they are. That's cool. Let's make this one different material. Carpet. Oh, you know, the light, I might have rotated things around the light. The light might be buried inside some of that stuff. So let's see. Easiest way to do this is to look at it in 2 elevation views. Boy, it's, yeah, looks like I need to move all this stuff like that, and then move this up. And then look at it from a left view. Yeah, looks good. Maybe down a little bit. But one thing is the inside is carpeted as well. So it's going to be absorbing a lot of the light in there. So I think in this one, I'm going to paint the insides white so I'll get more reflectiveness. Let's give that a try. So to do that, I'll pick this and move it. Let's get into plan view. Whenever I'm moving things like this, I move them like an even number of feet or inches or something away so that I can always move them back. Never mind, I'll just do them white. We'll make a white material. New material. I keep forgetting. You create it there, you have to rename it white. Then you can set it. Okay. Now I can paint with it. Tab that one, 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 tab that one. Okay. Now I'll move this back into place. Control S. Yes, replace. Load into project loads. Yes. Okay, so white inside, carpet on the outside. Genius. That's actually a lovely example because we didn't have to get it perfect and we could have fun with it. So it's like, yeah, good on all counts. I just love, you know, how nice these reflections are. You know, I mean, that's all that stuff reflected in each other. It's great. I think that's got page 3 done. So we can do its brightness. Oh, we could put a filter on that guy. Let's just try this. Here's this. Edit type. Let's do a green filter because we're not doing red, that's for sure. Apply. It's getting there. It's really getting there. My grandsons would just would love to have that. They've got constellations on the ceilings and like that, little projectors for that. But that was tired of that after a month. But they would never tire of this. In addition to rocking, with the LEDs, they come in little strips that have the red, blue, and green together, which can make any color at all in combination. So and they can just cycle from blue to green to red to purple to indigo